that. We're now recording. I didn't even ask your permissions. If you don't like it, by the way, feel free to tell me and I'll destroy the recording. Anyway, so what we did is we had a temporal trigger last time. So on a certain event at a certain time, it blew up. What I want to do is if someone changes the name to any of these things, I want to know who did it, when did they do it, and what did they do? That's basically what I want to know. Who did it, when did they do it, and what did they do? Right? So to get us going, I think what I did, some of the code I actually am going to copy. I've got basically this little bit of code right here. Oh, come on, don't highlight the whole thing. Okay, you know what? I can play that game too. I'll just download it. How about that? And I'm going to do that. This bit of code I will copy. Actually, I'll be copying that one too. All right, so let's go to here. All right, so we got to drop regions purge, and you know what that's going to do? It's going to basically try and get rid of the regions table if it exists. There is no regions table, so we're likely going to see an error. I've also got something called a history table, which I'll talk about in a minute, which we're going to drop. Then I'm just basically creating a straight regions table, and I never remember whether this has shown up yet in the textbook, but this is kind of a neat way to create an auto num, is what that will do. That'll create an auto num, which you guys, I'm sure, remember a little bit from your access days. And then I've got a comment on the table, a comment on the column. So when I run this dude, I get my two little error messages where it's trying to drop. Then it creates it, and now it's on the two comments. And if I was to run it again, by the way, let's clear the wreckage and run it again. It looks pretty clean, except why? Oh, that's right. I never created the regions table, the history table yet, right? But either way, it's a bit cleaner. So there is that. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, that's just work stuff. Okay, who cares about corporate jobs? No one cares about corporate jobs. All right, so good. Now, as I said, what I want to do is I want to basically track a certain column and the things that change in that column. And so the next piece of code is this history table. And after this, we'll get a little bit more exciting. So here's the history table. And the history table, what I've got is I've got myself a little autonom, a surrogate key. You might remember me saying 100 million times, right? A surrogate key is just a primary key where it's just an increasing number, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the surrogate key. Then I've got when did this thing change, where I'm defaulting to the sys date. I've got who, where I'm defaulting to the user. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's a default going on there. And then afterwards, I'm just interested to know what is the region ID, and then what was it before, and what is it now? Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up or something, or a thumbs down, or sad face, or something. Give me some sugar, basically, is what I'm saying. So what I got here is a fairly standard audit table. It has its own key. Not related at all to region ID, by the way. It's its own key. Then it's got something that's going to default to right now, something that's going to default to who, and then this thing, which I'll talk about later, but right now it's going to default to this. Hopefully we never see that default. And then what the region ID is not changing, so I'm not basically tracking that, but I am interested in what the old region name was and what the new region name is. So again, if I clear this thing and I run it again, it looks fairly clean. Okay. Let me just prove a couple points here in case you've forgotten what sysdate is. If I go select sysdate and user from dual, which we still don't know what that is yet, but we're coming up to that moment in the textbook. It's going to talk about it. But sysdate returns today's date. User returns who you actually are. Okay, so they're both functions returning some default things. And please remember that this is only showing me the date, but it could show me the time too, if the date and time format was set. Okay, but I don't really care about time. Yeah, I don't care about time for this. All right, so let's imagine now that I'm going to do another quick select on it. Select asterisk from the HR regions table. Our current regions table has got nothing in it, but the HR regions table has got stuff in it. So let's have a look. So if someone changes Americas to Grant Spencer land, I would like a record or a row in the history table. And what it's going to look like The row is going to look something like 1 or whatever the surrogate key is. It's going to basically look like now, whatever now is, right? And then it's going to look like me, DCTC Grant. And then if someone changed it, what kind of DML statement do you think would have changed it? An insert, update, or delete? I have my chat. Why? An update. Thank you very much. So the DML type would be an update. The region ID would be whatever the region ID was of that update. So let's imagine that's also 1. And then it would be Americas. Americas is what it was. That's the old value. That's the old region name. And the new region name would basically be Grantland. That's kind of what the insert statement would look like. Okay, so before we go any further, it's about time I show you the wonders of another particular kind of thing, of a special type of trigger. So to set myself up for this, I'm actually going to leave here and go to another session. I'm going to go create table my crap as select asterisk regions. I'm deliberately picking on regions because it's a small table and I don't have to worry about too many updates. So remember, what this will do is it'll create a table called mycrap of the same structure as this table and with the same data. So if I go select asterisks from mycrap without the extra special semicolon, what we're going to see is it's going to look a lot like the regions table. Why? What happened? Oh, semicolon. Semicolon. Remember, every statement in a semicolon. So there's mycrap. So I'm going to do that print statement thing, which, remember, it kind of looks a little bit weird, right? The print statement thing. It's basically to remind you what that looks like. This is your Hello World program. DBMS output is the package. Put line is the procedure, which should say Hello World. Okay, and then I go end. And that is a program. If I was to run that program, you'd think you'd see something, but you don't, right? And you don't because what it did is it put that line, it put the hello world into some kind of buffer. And so for me to see that buffer, I have to go set server output on. This will turn on the server output buffer, which is where that thing is. And so what will happen now is we'll actually be able to see it. Ready? Oh, no, what's going on? Set server output. I'm missing a T. There, that's better. Set server output on. Go. So do you see how it took like a microsecond longer there? What happened there is when I went set server output on, it took a second for the database to turn that buffer on, and then basically now the Hello World program showing up. Okay, so that was, you guys got some big points for that one, if I remember correctly, in the grade book. So now let's actually use prints as a way to sort of debug something. So last class, you guys got familiar with something called a statement level trigger. You didn't know it was called a statement level trigger. You just called it a trigger. But it's create or replace trigger. And then it's just a name, which I'll get back to in a minute. Then the next line is basically the event. So I'm going to go before is the timing. Update is the event. On mycrap is the object. Lots of stuff going on that line. And then we could just do this. So I'm going to create that little trigger. Awesome. And so watch what happens when I go update mycrap, set region name equal to region name. So there should be no change to the data, no nothing. But I'm going to clear this out. And when I go update, Hello World shows up. Pretty cool, huh? Right? I mean, hopefully it's not as cool because hopefully by now you've got stuff exploding all over the place. But this is a slightly less cool thing than explosion. So I'm going to change the text here from Hello World to before update statement, because that's kind of when it's blowing up. It's blowing up before the update statement. So when I go, or not blowing up, it's printing it before the update statement. So now when I do my little update, before update statement. Well, there's other possibilities here. You could have it fire off after the update statement. And again, I'm not spelling it right, but that's okay, because I'll get it back later after. So this is now going to blow up after, or prints a statement after the update statement. So I'm going to go, trigger is compiled, and now let's do this. Let's do this, and let's go. And look at the excitement there. Oh, that's interesting. Oh my goodness. look what happened. Right? You're not trying to sit there and do like $250 million budgets today. This one here, I ended up repeating the name. So that's bad. So let's do this. I'm going to say before update statement, my crap trigger. That's what I'm going to call that guy. I'm going to go after update statement, my crap trigger. That's what I'm going to call that guy. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go drop trigger name. And that should basically get rid of the crappy trigger name. And it did. Yay for me. All right. All right. So here we go. This guy is going to be the before update statement trigger. Done. This guy is going to be the after update statement trigger. Done. And then where's my little update statement? We clear and we will go run. And there's the guy firing off before. There's the guy firing after. Does that timing make sense? Sure it does, Grant. Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense because this is going to fire off before the statement and after the statement. Now notice, if I was to go ahead and go delete from my crap, we aren't going to see a trigger fire off because that event wasn't what I basically planned on, right? But if I was to go before update or delete on my crap, and now I go delete, clear. Now we can kind of see that text line pop up. All right. So the big lesson here, just to quickly review, is that this is firing off before the update or delete statement. This is firing off after the update statement. Okay, they are called statement level triggers. Now, those are not the only triggers out there. And by the way, this is one of those things where I have to keep rolling back, otherwise I just make a mistake. There is another variation of this, and the variation is row level trigger. And you'll be able to see something really cool here. Create or replace trigger blah, blah, blah before update on Minecraft for each row. Okay, and just for giggles, let me just go ahead and do the after one too. Oh no, after this one. This is the after. So create or replace trigger after update row, after the update of Minecraft for each row. And then it's going to say row. All right, and let's do our little update again. Update Minecraft set region name equaling to region name. Ready for the fireworks? Won't this be like way more exciting than watching Game of Thrones, especially last season? So you got your statement level here, row level here, row level there. So let's go. And why did that not do it? Did I not compile these? Okay, undo. Go. Tink, tink. All right, so now they're definitely compiled. Go. Yeah, that's what I was expecting to see. So there's our statement level trigger. Then before the row, after the row, 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 and then after the statement. Isn't that just darn exciting? Can you imagine that? Isn't that cool? Now, you're going to think, but Grant, why in the world would we do this? So you've already seen one use case why you'd want to maybe stop something from happening before, right? And we're heading towards, excuse me, the audit trigger, where we want maybe something to happen after the update. But let me show you a neat thing that actually happens in row level triggers. Row level triggers know what the row was and know what the row became. They know what the old version of the row was and what the new version of the row became. So for example, if I change this thing to an upper, right? The old version would be in title case, but the new version would be uppercase. That's what's going to happen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change. Seriously? I don't know what it is. Can I have it all back? Thank you. All right. So it's going to be before trigger, blah, 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 blah. So before update row, I'm going to use a, hopefully this won't freak you out too much, but I'm going to go put a little dash. I'm going to put a little dash. Let me show you what that's going to look like, just so you can see that in all of its glory. So there's compilations. We're going to do a quick little update. And so you can see there's the dashes. There's the dashes right there. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick little undo. And now I'm going to say update concatenate with, oh my goodness, colon old dot region name. All right. And yeah. New dot region name. All right, I'm going to take that exact same bit of code. I'm going to put it right there, and I'm going to say became. All right. Oh my goodness, plenty of chances for something bad to happen, but let's look. I'm a little bit nervous about that, but it looks good. Okay, so let's do a quick undo. Remember, by the way, creating triggers is DML, so it'll commit. That's why I'm constantly undoing my change or rolling it back. Undo that. Okay, let's clear it. All right, here we go. Go. Oh my goodness, it was beautiful. Look at how beautiful that is. That's the best demonstration you're ever going to see. So before the update statement, that trigger fires off. The update row, it says Europe is about to become uppercase Europe. Then after the row, Europe became Europe. So the old version, in both cases, it knew what the old version was and it knew what the new version became. That's the big lesson here. That is pretty important. So you have the for each row, and as soon as you do a for each row, you get this thing, a record, if you want. I don't know how much programming you guys have, but you have a record, or even like an object, another word for that. You have an object that knows it's got the same structure as each row in that table, and it knows what its old value is and what the new value is. So that's a pretty big moment there, because what we can do is we can do things like, for example, let's say I was updating a salary and I didn't want the salary to ever go down. Well, that's something here. I could basically say if the old salary is greater than the new salary, then blow up or something like that, right? Or just basically in this case, I want to track what the region names changed to. All right, so I think what I might do is I might actually save that as a script and let you look at that later. This is a pretty pure demonstration of a row level trigger. Let's go back to my problem. So back over here now, I'm going to have a regions table, and I want to insert a row into the history table. I just want it to basically, it's going to pick the next key, the when, the user, the type. It's going to have the new region ID, because in theory they should be the same anyway. Then it's going to have the old region name and the new region name, what the region name became. So the insert statement should look something like this. Insert into the regions hist table, right? So insert into that. Now here's the thing. Remember, if you have defaults and you don't specify them, you don't then the defaults will basically be picked, right? So I'm not going to specify region ID or history here. I'm not going to specify region when, region user, for now, I'm not even going to specify the type. All I'm going to do is I'm going to basically say, I'd like you to insert the region ID, the old region name, and the new region name. All right. And what are the values? At this point, I'm just going to hard code them. So I'm going to go 1, and then I'm going to go Americas. And Americas. At this point, I'm just testing out my insert statement to see how is that going to work. Is that a good insert statement? I go. And it's a good insert statement. It does seem to work. If I go select asterisks from the region's hist, I'm going to see that one row. Awesome. Okay, let's undo it. We don't want to see it again. So now, and where I'm heading, by the way, is I don't want you guys creating triggers that have a lot of code in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take this insert statement, make it into a program that takes parameters, then create a trigger that calls that program. That's basically what I'm going to do. So to make this into a program, pretty easy. I can go begin, and then I can go end, and do a little bit of funky indenting, and we're good to go. So let's just do that, do that, do that. Yeah. So any problems with it basically taking the insert statement and wrapping it into a block, basically? Probably not at this point. Let's make ourselves a declaration section, because remember, we don't want to have these variables just being hard-coded in the executable section. So I'm going to go declare. I'm going to create myself a variable called vRegionID, which is a number, I'll just say at this point, and it's assigned 1. We're going to go V for variable, by the way, old region name, which is going to be a varchar 2. Let's just say 30. That's my favorite thing to do. And I'm going to assign it this Americas thing in a minute. And then we're going to go V new region name, which is also going to be a varchar 2, 30. I'm going to assign it this string. So let's basically grab that. I'm going to go copy and paste, semicolon. I'm going to grab that, copy and paste, and semicolon. And then down here, instead of having a bunch of hard-coded values, we're going to go copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. I run it. It had no problem, and that row is there. So far, so good. Next step. That's a block. We now want to make that thing into a piece of code that lives on the database. We're going to make it into a procedure. To do that, we get rid of the declared. We go create or replace procedure. So once I do this and I go run it, now it's basically said that that thing compiled. That procedure is now existing over here in the procedure section, wherever that is. There he is. So he's living there now. He's not just a piece of code sitting on my IDE that's got to make the journey all the way to the database to run. Now this thing actually exists on the database, and it's existing in the same place where the insert statements are being run. So it's actually pretty cool. So now if I want it to actually run, I'm going to basically go begin, if you want, and then put that thing in there, the procedure name in there, and end. And so what's going to happen is that my block is going to basically call that procedure and run that. And it does. And then when I go select, that row made it in. Note, by the way, that this key is incrementing all by itself. Isn't that beautiful? Didn't have to do anything to get it. It's creating all by itself. All right, good deal. So this is obviously pretty limited because we really want to pass it in the parameters of, in this case, 1 Americas and Americas, right? So we basically need to have parameters. So what we're going to do, it's a little bit gross, but I'm basically going to pull this code out of there. I'm going to put that code into here. This is now basically in the parameter section. And again, you will not have to do it this way. I'm just trying to explain the code as I go. And the parameters in these procedures are between parentheses. they basically, we don't need to have these values anymore, right? Because they're going to be coming in when I call it. And actually, parameters don't typically have any kind of constraints. And the only thing missing here are commas. So basically now if I make this look a little bit nicer. Killing me. All right, why, oh, comma. All right, so now I go, actually roll back in case there's a problem. I go. So the procedure compiled cleanly. Now if I actually tried to run it, it's gonna go, dude, you don't have enough values. You're not passing anything in. That's because now what I have to do is when I pass it in stuff, I've got to pass it in a number, a string, and another string. So I'm going to pass it in a number, a string, and another string. So now that work is being done through the parameters. Awesome. Okay, good deal. Now, should I do that next thing? Actually, there is one other thing, by the way. I'm feeling a twinge of shame about what's going on here. So I got to tell you, remember parameters in this language, they have different modes. I have to communicate to people that these are actually values coming in. Notice it's the default, so I didn't have to do that, but some future programmer is going to look at what you did there, and they're going to go, man, that person didn't know what they're doing. So always specify your mode. So that's an in. I don't want to talk too much more about that because I don't want to talk too much more about coding here, but because these are coming in, typically I'm going to use a sort of a Hungarian notation approach here, where I'm basically just going to change the variables to I to indicate that they're coming in. Not a big deal, just a little bit of something so I can sleep better at night. All right, so now I got myself my nice little procedure. You're thinking, Grant, how does any of this matter with all the trigger crap that you were talking about before? Here's how it matters. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab one of these lines. And I think typically when you're dealing with tracking what the data became, you're better to go after, right? Go after than before. Notice that either one of them did have a sense of what was before and what was after. They both had the sense of that. But in this case, we're just tracking something that happened. So why don't we just go after? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this trigger code. I'm going to go paste it here. And I'm going to call it after update row. And it's going to be after update row on regions. It's going to be on the update of regions. And now instead of doing this print statement, I'm going to do this thing instead. So instead of doing the print statement, I'm going to do that instead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the :new region ID, and then the old region name, and then the new region name. All right, so create or replace the trigger with this name after the update of regions, which has been the whole point of this table here, right? So here's my regions. After the update of regions, for each row, begin. We're not going to print anything anymore. We're beyond that. We're going to basically call that procedure that I wrote, which is right there, and it's going to pass in the new object's region ID, the old object's region name, and the new object's region name. All right, so let's run it. And it compiled cleanly, which is awesome. Let's put some data in it, by the way. We need to get at least one little piece of data. Let's get the Americas in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, throw Americas in there. Oh, this is the crap one. We want that one. All right, so I want to do. So I don't really need this anymore. That's just gone. I'm going to keep this guy around, and I'm going to go paste. So I'm going to go insert. So the insert happened. No trigger is fired. That trigger was only going to fire after an update, not an insert, right? Which probably means that there's nothing inside of this table, and there's nothing inside of this table. But now let's do the update. Update regions, set region name equal to upper region name. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go. It updated without a problem. And if we look at what's in the region history, now we're seeing that the trigger basically created that row. And it knows what the old one was and what the new one is. Pretty cool. Let's go a little bit further now. I'm going to undo. And I'm going to set this trigger to fire off after the update or insert or delete. So this will fire off on all DML on this particular object. All right. So let's get that in. And again, roll back. So nothing's here, right? You're empty. Good deal. And I think regions is probably empty too. Good deal. Okay, let's undo. So I create this trigger. So there it is, audit. Oh, you know, after. Oh, forget, hold it. I'm mad. I'm a little bit disgruntled. Drop trigger that. That's a bad name for what this thing's about to do. It's actually, I'm going to call it after DML. Okay, remember the case isn't as important. So after DML, I can't remember what I was trying to do with R, but okay, I can live with that. All right, so now watch this. This is going to, it's going to rock your socks. It's going to rock your world here. I'm going to take these insert statements and we're going to put data into the regions table. So instead of this, I'm going to go a bunch of insert statements. So let's get those in there. Go. Bunch of insert statements. What's inside the history table now? Look, the old didn't exist, but the new did. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to update the regions. And actually, I'm going to do something really egregious here. I'm just going to set it to Grantland. I'm taking over the entire universe now because the world is in such good shape that I want to own it all. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go update. So now they're all updated. And so now what's in the history table now? Well, those are my inserts. And now here's the updates. Europe became Grantland. America became Grantland. Asia became Grantland. Middle East became Grantland. Awesome. Tell you what, you know what? Wasn't that cool? Actually, I don't like any of the regions anymore. I'm going to go delete from regions. So this will delete all the rows. I'm going to go. The rows are deleted. What's now inside of that trigger table? The history table. So now down here, again, notice this beautifully. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, so right now what's going on is that because this was deleted, we don't know what the key was because the new row doesn't exist. Here's what the old row was, and here's what the new row was. So that's actually pretty cool. Now, this bothers me a titch. And by the way, this bothers me a titch. So we're going to fix it with just one more trigger option, and then I'm actually going to introduce you to a function. So back up to here. So let's did I roll that back? I rolled that back right now. Right. So is there anything inside the history table? Nope. And I suspect there's nothing inside the regions table either. Right. So they're all blissfully unaware of anything. All right. So as you saw in this history table, there was a column there called, okay, you can't see it there, so let's just go up here, Dml type. The Dml type, I was defaulting to this, and I basically said you should never have to have, that should never show up, is basically what I said. So how can I get this so the Dml type will say that it's inserting or updating or deleting? Well, there actually is a really cool way to do this. I could basically, in not my procedure, yeah. In my procedure, I can get this thing ready to go so that it knows. I'm going to set it in a variable called Dml type. Okay, so I'm setting in a variable called Dml type. I'm going to basically pump that puppy in right here. And so it's Dml type. I want it to go into that column. So region ID, old, new, right? So now the Dml type here is going to go into here, which means it's going to go into here. So this procedure now is basically ready to go, and it's fine. I'm not going to bother running it by itself. I'm going to go straight to the trigger. So here's our basic trigger, which is calling that procedure. And so what I kind of want it to do is I want it to pass in, like pretty well right here, whether it's inserting, updating, or deleting. So the first thing I'm going to need to have is I got to bring back my declaration section. So I need to have a variable, which I'm going to call declare, which is going to be v Dml type varchar 2 and 30. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it into here. Now, actually, before I do this, notice that the region history is now expecting 4 arguments. If I try to compile it right now, we're going to get an error, right? You remember where to go to look for your errors? Data dictionary. Select asterisk from user errors, and that is where your errors live. Right? So sure, they're also showing up down here, but notice again, it's saying wrong number of types of arguments is what it's saying down there. All right, so back up to here. So let's fix this now. So I need to basically pass in the Dml type. Cool. This should compile cleanly now, but it's going to be pretty useless, right? Because the Dml type doesn't have any value. I mean, you're not missing anything. There's nothing assigning it a value. So to assign it a value, I got to use a control structure, the best kind of control structure ever, really old, the if statement. And so basically what I want to say is if something is true, then v Dml type is assigned inserting. Else, if something else is true, actually it's elif, by the way, which you can thank, by the way, the language this is based on. That's ridiculous, but anyways, then the v Dml type is assigned updating. Sure. Else, there's only one other option here. The v Dml type is going to be deleting. And if. All right, by the way, I think each of these needed to have a semicolon too. I mean, it's so bad right now, it's not even telling me that, but it probably did. All right, so here's a couple things going on. Because I'm in a trigger, I actually got a neat little power here. I can actually say if inserting, then do this. Notice the error is now here. If updating, then do this. Otherwise, deleting. Let's make it look a little bit cleaner, right? So now if I run this dude, I compile it. It compiled cleanly. We're really excited about that. And so, check my history. Was there anything in it? Nothing's in it. All right, good deal. So let's run the insert statements. So there's all my insert statements. What's in the history table? Inserting, right? If inserting, then this variable becomes inserting. That variable is being put there. Which, okay, whatever. Which means it's being passed into here, which means it's making it to here, right? So, all right, so there's our inserting. Let's do a quick little update. We did a little update. Let's check to see what's in there now. There's our updating. And let's do a quick little delete. There's our delete. What's in there? They're deleted. Pretty cool. And the only other thing is, what if I want to somehow remember what the old key was? Right? If I want to remember what the old key was. So let me do a quick little undo. And I think I'm going to fix that problem here. Well, if it's new, it does not exist. All right. So this is not actually in the handout because I wasn't thinking about it then, but there's a function. Actually, before I show you, let me show you the function first of all on its own. Okay, so let's go to here. Let me just show you something about select asterisks from HR employees. Okay, so right here, all I want you to do, don't think too much, just look at all those nulls. See all those nulls? So now if I was to basically say, hey, show me commission percent, which I think I spelt wrong. Commission percent. Yeah, I did it wrong. Commission, are there two S's? Yeah, you look good now. All right, so they're all nulls. There's a neat little function. Again, you guys who know your Excel and stuff recognize the values of functions. There's something in here called null value, which basically says if this is null, make it something else. So for example, make it 0. So this is null, make it 0. So that's what the null value function is. So what I can do over here is I can say that the null value of the old one is the new one. Oh, but I wouldn't do it there. Oh, no, don't do it there. The old region name, yeah, don't do it there. Okay, so did I screw that up totally? No, I didn't. It's right here. That's where I want to do it. So I want to go, so again, when it's being deleted, it loses it. So what I'm going to say is that the null value of the new one is what the old one was. When you start getting really gross, complicated things like this, by the way, feel free to start like pushing things onto their own lines or whatever, so that future generations of people won't hate you. All right, so there you go. That looks a titch better, maybe. I don't know. So let me undo what I just did. Let me go. So the thing compiled cleanly. Let's run through the inserts again. So we run through the inserts. Okay, what's inside that table? So I'm okay. There was no. Oh wow, look at that. That key's kicking off there too. But anyway, so there was no old name, but it does know what the key became, which is good. I'm going to do a little update. Okay, what's inside the history table? This didn't change, but these guys did change. Awesome. I'm going to go do a delete. What's inside that table? And so now what it did is it remembered what the key was, which I'm actually okay with. And then basically the information's gone. All right. So that code was my explanation of this, which I strongly recommend that you give it a shot. Give it a shot in your own little environments. But basically, I've got you a setup. By the way, the entire thing should run as a script if you want. I mean, the fact it's got colors and stuff doesn't really matter. It works as code. But and remember, that's a comment, right? So I'm basically saying the setup here is you drop the table, then we go create, then we do the comments. Then they created a history table, and the history table's got its own key. It's got a column tracking when, a column tracking who, and a column tracking what. In the case of the when, the default is today's date and time. In the case of the who, it's the default's the user. And this should never really happen, but I put a little default in there anyway because I don't want it to blow up. The thing is, just so you know, if you have an error, a logical error in your trigger, and it starts blowing up when people are trying to like run their business on the tables, that's a bad deal, right? You don't want the trigger to be the thing that, you know, bringing a multi-billion-dollar company to its knees. So you should basically have it run as smooth as you possibly can, right? And then at this point, we're just tracking the region ID I put in there because I just want a key, and then I got the old and the new. So now, once this thing's in play, if someone says to me, "Hey, who changed Americas to Grantland?" I can now go into this table and say, "Well, Danielle changed Americas to Grantland on Christmas Day with an update." That's what I can basically do with this table. So because I don't want to put a lot of code into the trigger, I created myself a standalone procedure. And the standalone procedure is called insert regions history, which whatever. But I got myself a variable here that's going to track the type. And then the guys that you know already, the region ID, old name, whatever, they're all inputs. They're all coming in, I should say. Remember, with variables, parameters, you do not actually specify any constraints. So you don't go 30 or number 2 or any of that. It's just basically what kind of data is it. It can't handle any kind of limiting factors there. And then this guy does a straight insert into the history table, and it's inserting the type, the ID, the old and the new, and it's taking in those values from the parameters. And then the trigger itself, it's firing after the insert or update or delete on the regions. For each row, I do need a variable that's going to remember whether it's inserting, updating, deleting. So the declaration section becomes important, right? And then I've got this little bit of logic here that's basically populating that variable. I've been doing this for a while. I can never think of anything cooler to do with this. So like periodically entertain the idea of using some cooler structures like case or whatever, but I can't. So these ideas only really exist inside of a row level trigger. And so then at this point, I call upon my procedure insert, and then it's passing in the new object's region name, the old object's new object's region ID, the old object's region name, and the new object's region name. And remember what I did to make that a little bit cooler is I used that NVL right there, null value. So if this guy happened to be blank, which it would be in a delete, then use the old version. That's what I'm doing there. I may or may not update this. And then I basically do my testing with the updates, inserts, updates, deletes, and I check out the history. That is everything you need to know about a row level trigger. So I can tell from the jubilation and all the reactions. What is it? It's a great reaction. Or is that only Teams? I don't know. Anyway, there's a little firecracker reaction. Anyway, so I can tell that you guys are all really excited about that. This is what I definitely want you to do, though. I will want you for your projects to put one of these things in play on one of your tables. Now, a classic example of this would be, I mean, that was just me sort of doing it on one table, one column. The example I was going to run with was this one, which is the row to the audit trigger, where what I'm tracking, and this is all Danielle's favorite, is the history, right? The history of a person. So in this case, I want to know, I'm only interested when their names change, when their salaries change, or when their managers change, right? That's what I'm interested in. So it's kind of got the same deal here. I got a little procedure, right? It's a little bit more complicated because I'm looking at looking at 3 distinct changes that could be happening. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. And then we have our level trigger. We got a nice little thing trying to work out what the DML type is. And then in it goes with the inserts. And so here is just one example of me testing out the change of a last name. But obviously, changing salaries or something I'm dealing with today where I'm basically changing someone's bonus to 0. Those are the kind of things you want to know who did that change. And so that's what that audit trigger is about. It's worth you checking that one out too. The only thing is that only you would be able to do this because you need to have an employees table. I never really told you how to do this, but you know how you can get an employees table into your own schema? I know you do. You're just not telling me. Remember, create table employees as select asterisk from my HR.employees. Right at this point, you can go. You have a nice little employees table, and then if you took all this code, I'm going to download, open, and literally go copy and into my little thing, paste. This should work just smooth as silk. We do our little drop, doesn't drop, do a little creates, scrolling on down. Now I'm going to create the procedure, create. Oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that. It's going to create a trigger, create, does the trigger without a problem. Now we're going to actually just test it. It did the updates. What's in my employee history? And there you go. Right? So you got two pretty good examples. One was a very simple example. This one was slightly more realistic. Any questions and or comments?
Should we be working on our projects in the background this whole time, or is there going to be like a set time to work on that?
Yeah. So I think I've responded to all of your proposals. So the next step really is for you to do the data model of your proposal, right? So, and again, I prefer you using a tool like this because remember, this thing generates the code, right? So as much fun as some of the other stuff was, if you use this, it'll actually generate your create table statements and all that and your keys. And if you need help with that, let me know, especially next week, right? Next week when we're back in class, I can kind of show you or remind you how to do that. Or I may even have a video. I think actually it's in my fabulous YouTube channel. I think I've got something about how to do that. So then once you've got your model done, then at that point, you can start to create your objects. And then, yeah, that's when I think it would be probably a good deal to try and add some of these ideas into your projects. I mean, you're likely going to have one table in there that you can basically just say, yeah, you know what, if doing a certain time blow up, you're likely going to have one table there that you want to track at least one thing that changes, right? And then the next thing, we'll see if we get there, but there is actually one more thing that's actually pretty cool, but that might just be more of a demo. These are two super important ones. Good question.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Given the snow day and stuff, I kind of scaled back. This is all I really want to talk about today. So you guys are kind of like free. I didn't even do any homework today. So good for you for that. I think some of you, though, probably still have to do your exploding trigger thing. I know at least one of you wants to talk to you about your exploding trigger thing. So I'm more than happy to stay on for that person. Otherwise, I'll stop recording and I will put this recording also in that award-winning YouTube channel. But other than that, I'll just see you guys next week.